The lights are blinding. The studio hums with the buzz of microphones and restless producers counting seconds in their ears. On screen, two faces share the frame, one polished in practiced certainty, the other calm, steady, unflinching. Pam Bondi leans forward, voice sharp, her words slicing across Jasmine Crockett's sentence before it can find air. Hold on, Bondi insists, the tone dripping with the authority of someone used to talking uninterrupted. Crockett stops mid-thought, eyes narrowing but lips unmoved. The silence that follows isn't weakness, it's strategy. "She didn't raise her voice," the narrator begins, smooth and deliberate. "She didn't need to, because in that moment, silence itself became her weapon." For a second, everything slows. The lights, the movement, even Bondi's rhythm. Crockett's gaze doesn't waver. It lands like a verdict. The host glances awkwardly between them, sensing the imbalance, but too afraid to interrupt the spectacle. Online, the clip has already begun to spread. Muted captions flashing across screens. Pam Bondi overtalks Jasmine Crockett on live TV. A tweet surges through timelines. She really thought she could silence Jasmine? Back on set, Bondi keeps talking. The interruptions come in waves now, fast, rehearsed, designed to suffocate the space. Yet each time, Crockett's stillness grows louder. The audience feels it, the power in restraint, the tension of words withheld. "She's waiting," the narrator murmurs, waiting for the moment arrogance trips over itself. Bondi gestures, voice tightening as confidence collides with desperation. But Crockett's eyes hold steady, as if time itself has paused to see which will break first, the noise or the nerve behind it. And then, a flicker, that half-smile that says, "I see you coming undone." The audience doesn't know it yet, but something irreversible has begun. Because beneath those harsh lights, amid all that overtalk, the balance of power has already shifted. She just doesn't feel it yet. And when she finally does, when silence turns into something sharper than any argument, the world will be watching. But what came next would turn that silence into Bondi's loudest mistake.
Rewind the clock. The moment that froze the internet didn't begin with fireworks. It began with booking sheets, producer notes, and a network hungry for spectacle. Pam Bondi was introduced as the Republican strategist, seasoned, sharp-tongued, confident in her talking points. Across from her sat Jasmine Crockett, Democratic Congresswoman, lawyer, advocate, newcomer to the televised arena. The segment was pitched as a balanced debate, but everyone in that studio knew what kind of balance the network preferred. Bondi arrived rehearsed for confrontation, already smiling for the split screen. She'd done this before. Dominate the airspace, steer the conversation, turn complexity into soundbite. The control room leaned in, watching, ready to capture sparks. Crockett, by contrast, had walked in with papers, notes, and something less visible, the quiet patience of someone who's had to earn every inch of room to speak. The tension wasn't just political, it was generational, cultural, historical. It was the old guard meeting the new, the polished privilege of a media regular facing a woman who carried entire communities in her voice. The audience watching at home might not have realized it, but this was never going to be a debate about policies. It was about permission, about who's allowed to finish a sentence. For years, audiences have watched these moments play out. Women of color cut off mid-thought, their expertise second-guessed, their composure weaponized against them. "She's emotional," they say. "She's angry." The interruption becomes the story. The point gets lost. The pattern repeats. But tonight was different. Because Jasmine Crockett wasn't just another guest. She was a storm wrapped in calm. A woman who had learned how to make silence louder than any insult. She didn't come to trade talking points. She came to show what composure looks like when cornered. Bondi started the segment smoothly, smiling as she lobbed her first interruption within 30 seconds. It was textbook. Dominate early, fluster the opponent, control the frame. But Crockett didn't fluster. She didn't even blink. Viewers leaned forward, sensing something unusual, a kind of unbothered stillness that said, "Go ahead, use all the rope you need." Behind the glass, a junior producer whispered, "She's too calm." The senior nodded. "Just wait, Bondi always gets them to react." But Crockett wasn't giving her that satisfaction. This wasn't just a verbal sparring match. It was a test of narrative. Could the same old tactics still silence a voice forged in struggle? Could the practiced privilege of performance still overpower the patience of purpose? The host shuffled note cards, sensing the energy shift. Bondi talked faster, louder, layering her points with the confidence of someone used to controlling the headline. Crockett listened, eyes unwavering. For every interruption, every dismissive tone, she stored another moment of quiet power. The audience didn't know it yet, but history was tilting in real time. The internet was seconds away from exploding. Because this time, the pattern wouldn't repeat. This time, the calm would cut through the noise. And when that turn came, when preparation met arrogance, when truth refused to bow to volume, it wouldn't look like a debate at all.
Pam Bondi didn't just enter politics, she performed it. From her early days as Florida's Attorney General, she crafted an image that could charm a camera and deflect a question in the same breath. Her hair always immaculate, her tone smooth, her smile calibrated to land somewhere between authority and approachability. On television, she was the smiling enforcer, the woman who could spin a scandal into a sermon about law and order. To the untrained eye, she radiated confidence. But for those who listened closely, that confidence came with fine print. Her sentences were polished, but her answers often looped back to safety. She didn't debate, she dominated airtime. Her composure wasn't built on conviction, it was built on habit. Every appearance was a campaign to protect an image, not to confront a truth. When networks booked her, they knew what they were buying. Someone who could project certainty no matter how shaky the ground. Even when the questions turned uncomfortable, campaign donations, political favoritism, the whispers of selective prosecutions, Bondi's reflex never failed her. She would smile wider, shift tone, and flood the moment with charm. It worked, mostly, because in a media landscape addicted to confidence, sincerity often gets drowned out by volume. Her smile was PR grade, her interruptions muscle memory. For years, that formula shielded her. She became a regular on cable news panels, spinning narratives with the precision of a defense attorney and the cadence of a talk show host. She had learned the oldest trick in television politics, that conviction doesn't matter as long as you sound like you have it. But there's a cost to living behind polish. Over time, the mask begins to fit too tightly, and when the light hits at the wrong angle, the cracks start to show. In private moments, Bondi's confidence flickered. Producers noticed it, the brief pauses before she went live, the way her hand tightened around her note cards when faced with opponents who didn't play by her rules. Those pauses didn't make air, but they existed. Tiny fractures in the performance of certainty. And the thing about performances is that they only work when everyone else agrees to play along. That night, across from Jasmine Crockett, the illusion began to slip. Crockett didn't flinch, didn't feed the show. Every interruption Bondi threw her way landed on silence, and that silence terrified her. Because for the first time, Bondi's usual rhythm, talk fast, sound sure, stay smiling, wasn't working. She could feel control drifting. The studio air thickened. The host, usually deferential, hesitated before redirecting to Bondi. The control room murmured. Viewers noticed the subtle shift, the way Bondi's tone grew sharper, her sentences longer, her laughter forced. She was fighting to reassert the dynamic that had always favored her. But Crockett's stillness changed the equation. Bondi's words began to sound less like arguments and more like defense. The same smile that once disarmed now felt rehearsed, brittle under the studio lights. The louder she grew, the smaller she seemed. For a woman who'd built a career out of controlling the frame, losing it on live TV was unthinkable. Yet that's exactly what was happening. Not in an explosion, but in erosion. Confidence cracking, piece by piece.
Every time Crockett didn't take the bait, Bondi's insecurities whispered a little louder. Why isn't this working? Why isn't she flustered? The interruptions multiplied, not out of power, but panic. Because in truth, Bondi's authority had always depended on imbalance, on others conceding her dominance before she earned it. Crockett wasn't conceding anything. The villain here wasn't monstrous. She wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. She was entitled to the last word, to uninterrupted speech, to a space where her certainty was never questioned. And watching that entitlement unravel in real time felt bigger than politics. It felt like justice. By the halfway mark of the debate, Bondi's lines had lost their edge. The smile remained, but the warmth behind it had gone cold, like a spotlight burning too long on a plastic surface. The viewers could sense it. Social media could smell it. Something in her poise had curdled into defensiveness. The narrator's voice returns, low and deliberate. Confidence built on control always looks invincible until it meets something steadier than fear. On the split screen, Bondi leans in once more, interrupting mid-sentence, trying to reclaim the tempo. But this time, Crockett doesn't move, doesn't blink. She just lets the silence breathe. And for the first time in her career, Bondi looks smaller on camera than the woman she's trying to overtalk. Because confidence can't save you when facts walk in wearing calm.
Before the studio lights, before the viral clips, before her name became a symbol of composure under fire, there was Jasmine Crockett, a daughter of Texas soil who learned early that dignity doesn't shout. It stands its ground. Her voice, now measured and unwavering, was not born in the marble corridors of Congress, but in the cramped corners of county courts where justice rarely looked like her. She began her career as a public defender, standing beside the accused when no one else would. In the courthouse corridors of Dallas, she met mothers who couldn't afford bail, teenagers marked by systems older than their families, men whose names would never trend but whose stories deserved to be heard. Every case, every loss, every small victory carved something into her, a refusal to bow even when the room wasn't built for her voice. In those early years, she learned that speaking truth wasn't always about being loud. Sometimes it was about being unmovable. Judges interrupted her. Opposing attorneys talked over her, but Crockett didn't flinch. Her calm wasn't submission, it was strategy. She was building endurance in a space that demanded her silence. Every "Miss Crockett, your time is up" became a kind of training. Every dismissal, a spark. The narrator's voice softens, reflective. Before she ever sat across from Pam Bondi, Jasmine Crockett had been interrupted more times than anyone could count. But each interruption taught her something precious, that silence, when held with purpose, could shake an entire room. Outside the courtroom, her battles expanded. She became a civil rights advocate, a voice against voter suppression, an attorney who stood on courthouse steps calling out hypocrisy dressed in legalese. She spoke at rallies, in church basements, at vigils for lives taken too soon, and every time she stepped to a microphone, she carried the faces of the unheard with her. She didn't fight to be famous. She fought to be fair. The rise to Congress wasn't an accident. It was the natural evolution of a fighter who learned that the best revenge against disrespect is persistence. Her campaigns were fueled by small donations, community faith, and long nights spent in town halls where voices cracked with exhaustion but never gave up hope. She arrived in Washington not with the swagger of a politician, but with the discipline of a litigator. She read everything, prepared for every question, armed herself not with rhetoric, but with receipts. And that's what made her dangerous to the establishment. She wasn't playing for cameras, she was playing for change. When she first appeared on TV panels, producers underestimated her. They saw a freshman Congresswoman, a black woman from Texas, and assumed she'd play defense. But Crockett had no interest in playing anything.
Her tone was calm, her arguments clean, her patience unnerving. She understood the game and quietly dismantled it one composed pause at a time. Her strength was not the roar of defiance, but the quiet fire that refuses to go out, the kind of fire that keeps burning long after the spotlight moves on. And that fire had been tested by those who mistook her calm for compliance, who assumed she'd wait her turn while others dictated her narrative. They were wrong then. They were about to be wrong again. Because the woman sitting under those studio lights wasn't a politician trying to score a point. She was a survivor of 1,000 small silencing attempts, and each one had taught her how to wield patience like a blade. The narrator continues. Every insult, every interruption, every dismissal, she absorbed them, not as wounds, but as lessons in restraint, and that restraint was her armor. She didn't come from money or media training. She came from communities where every word carried weight because every word had to count. That's why when Bondi's voice rose and the interruptions came fast, Crockett didn't need to fight for air. She'd been here before, just in different rooms with different faces, but the same energy, power mistaking itself for authority. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. It was the calm before the strike. Because Crockett knew that in today's America, dignity itself is an act of resistance, that speaking without shouting, that correcting without condescension, that standing your ground without losing your grace, these are the moves that outlast moments and build movements. She represents more than herself. To those watching from living rooms and phone screens, she is every woman who's been talked over in a meeting, every activist who has been dismissed as too passionate, every daughter who has been told to tone it down. When she sits in that studio, she carries them all, and that's what makes her unstoppable. The story of Jasmine Crockett isn't about confrontation. It's about reclamation. She reclaimed space, tone, dignity, all the things the world tried to tell her she didn't deserve. And when she speaks, it isn't just her voice the audience hears. It's the echo of every silenced one that came before. The narrator's tone sharpens now, the calm giving way to gathering electricity. So when the cameras turned on that night and Pam Bondi began her performance, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just another guest. She was history in human form, patient, prepared, and quietly dangerous.
Back in the studio, the air feels charged, heavy with the kind of tension that makes every breath sound like static. The segment resumes. Cameras tighten on the split screen, Bondi on the right, Crockett on the left. The host barely finishes his setup before Bondi jumps in again, slicing through Crockett's first sentence like a reflex. It's sharper this time, quicker, less controlled. She talks faster, piling words to keep momentum on her side. Her voice rides the airwaves like a gavel pounding a table that no longer commands respect. Crockett listens, nods, waits. The faintest smile flickers at the corner of her mouth, the kind that says, "I've seen this before." The narrator's tone drops into a low hum. Every overtalk was a gift. Because every second Bondi spoke, she dug the hole deeper. Bondi barrels through another interruption. She leans forward, gesturing, her tone climbing. "With all due respect, Congresswoman, you're not addressing the real issue." Crockett tilts her head slightly, eyes steady, unbothered. She lets the words pass like a gust of hot air. When she finally speaks, it's deliberate, low, calm. "If you'd let me finish my point, you might hear it." The audience shifts. Online, the chat scrolls faster. Comments flash across screens. She's unshakable. Bondi's losing her cool. Crockett's about to end her. Behind the glass, a producer whispers, "She's losing it." The director leans closer to the monitor. "Keep the split screen. Don't cut away. This is gold." Bondi keeps pushing. She mistakes Crockett's calm for weakness, the same mistake every loud performer makes before the fall. The louder she grows, the less anyone listens.
Viewers lean in, not for Bondi's argument, but for Crockett's reaction, waiting for that moment when silence turns into steel. The narrator breathes into the quiet. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a slow collapse, the sound of overconfidence meeting its echo. Bondi interrupts again. No, see, you're twisting. Crockett smiles wider now, almost pitying. Am I? Or are you just uncomfortable with the facts? The words land with precision. The studio goes still. Even the host blinks, unsure whether to step in or let the moment breathe. Bondi laughs, high-pitched, forced, and tries to regain footing. I'm just saying, if we're talking about accountability, but the rhythm is broken. Crockett's calm has shifted the gravity. Every attempt to cut her off now feels desperate. The audience can sense it, the power dynamic reversing in real time. The camera catches Crockett's composure, her chin lifted slightly as Bondi's words start to trip over themselves. It's not that Bondi has stopped talking, it's that no one is hearing her anymore. The narrator continues, voice like a current underneath the dialogue. In every clash, there's a moment when noise begins to sound like surrender, when the audience stops following the loudest voice and starts watching the calmest one. Bondi talks over the host now, trying to recover control. The host's eyes widen, surprised. This isn't part of the script. Pam, let's allow Congresswoman Crockett. No, I'm not finished, Bondi snaps. The chat explodes. She snapped. Oh, this is bad. Crockett's not even breaking a sweat. Crockett doesn't flinch. She leans forward slightly, her voice soft enough that the microphone almost has to chase it. Take your time, she says. You seem to need it. It's the kind of line that lands gently but detonates seconds later. The host exhales. The room tilts. Bondi stares back, realizing too late that the one thing she can't out-talk is poise. Her words start spilling, faster, louder, until they're just sound. Crockett sits still, a portrait of patience painted in the middle of chaos. And for the viewers, it's clear, this isn't just a disagreement, it's a reckoning. The narrator's voice deepens. When arrogance meets preparation, the ending writes itself. Because the truth doesn't need volume, it just needs timing. Then, the interruption that crosses the line. Bondi cuts her off again, this time with something personal, a jab about tone or attitude. The room tightens like a held breath. Even the host's smile falters. Crockett's expression changes, not anger, but precision. That calm becomes focus. Her eyes narrow. The narrator almost whispers now. And that's when Crockett decided to end it, with one line that would echo across America.
The silence after the jab hangs in the air like smoke. Even the studio lights seem to dim for a second, uncertain whether to flare or fade. Crockett doesn't blink. She inhales slowly, and when she finally speaks, her voice is firm. Not loud, not shaken, but deliberate, every syllable sharpened by composure. You keep talking over me because you don't want to hear the truth. It isn't shouted, but it cuts like a blade. The host freezes mid-turn, his cue cards motionless. Bondi's mouth stays open just long enough for the camera to catch it, the first flicker of confusion, the first fracture in control. The narrator's tone drops to a slow rhythm, as if the world itself has slowed to witness this. It wasn't a shout, it was a scalpel, and every word carved through pretense. Crockett leans forward, eyes locked on Bondi, the kind of gaze that doesn't confront, but disassembles. Her tone remains calm, surgical. You invited me here to speak, but what you really wanted was to perform outrage. And when the facts don't fit your story, you try to drown them out. That's not debate, that's fear, dressed in confidence. Bondi shifts in her seat. The studio audience is quiet, unsure whether to breathe. The host swallows, eyes flicking toward the control room as if to ask, do we cut to break? But Crockett isn't finished. She straightens, her voice steady, rising just enough to claim the air that was denied her. I've seen this before. In courtrooms, in hearings, in conversations where people like you think volume equals virtue. But it never does. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs a chance to finish its sentence. The line lands. Online, the feed detonates. Comments flood in. That's it! She ended her. Give this woman a medal. On screen, Bondi's practiced smile flickers. She tries to recover, but the rhythm is gone. Her words stumble over each other, the once smooth cadence now jagged, defensive. Well, I just think that's a mischaracterization. Crockett tilts her head slightly. Is it? Because I haven't interrupted you once. Yet somehow you've spoken twice as long. The audience gasps. The host's eyes widen. The narrator whispers, "Control doesn't look like silence anymore. It looks like composure." Bondi opens her mouth again, but nothing. The screen fades from the tense studio silence to the electric hum of the internet. It's midnight on the East Coast, but online, it's already morning, the dawn of a digital wildfire. Twitter is the first to ignite. The hashtags appear like sparks in the dark. Hashtag Crockett Clapback. Hashtag Pam Bondi silenced. Hashtag the mic drop moment. Within minutes, they're trending nationwide. The quote, "You keep talking over me because you don't want to hear the truth," is plastered across feeds, screenshots, and story reels. Some posts play it on loop. Others slow it down, adding captions like, "This is how composure wins." The narrator's voice returns, steady and awed. One woman's calm turned into a collective roar. Clips of the confrontation flood YouTube. Reaction channels post side-by-side edits, split-screen analysis, dramatic zooms, slow-motion replay of Bondi's faltering smile. Comment sections overflow with catharsis. Finally, someone said it. "This is every meeting I've ever been in." That silence at the end, perfection. Twitter takes it to another level. Music swells behind her line. Users remix it into motivational edits. One creator overlays Crockett's calm face with the caption, "When you've had to be quiet your whole life, your silence becomes strength." Another sets the clip to a bass drop. She ended her with one line. Millions of views, thousands of stitches, a movement disguised as a meme. On late-night TV, hosts replay the moment with gleeful precision. "You ever see someone get interrupted and win at the same time?" one jokes. The audience laughs, then applauds. Another segment calls it a masterclass in composure, the art of letting arrogance self-destruct. Cable news panels dissect it from every angle. Political analysts call it a defining exchange in the optics war. A veteran journalist says quietly, "That wasn't just a takedown, it was a turning point. She didn't out-yell her opponent, she outclassed her." The narrator threads through it all, voice like a current beneath the noise. Sometimes history doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers, and the world shouts back. Activists on Instagram pick it up next. They post side-by-side reels, Crockett versus Bondi, captioned "Composure is power." A viral carousel reads, "For every woman told she's too loud or too quiet, this moment was yours." Journalists write think pieces overnight. Why Jasmine Crockett's calm became the loudest sound in America. The day respect spoke louder than rage. How a 20-second clip redefined power on live TV. The comment sections glow like constellations, millions of tiny digital voices flickering together. Every post, every share feels like a small reclaiming. The narrator continues, "What started as an interruption became an invitation for everyone who'd ever been told to wait their turn." Even celebrities join in. A-list actresses retweet the clip with fire emojis. Musicians quote her line in lyrics. Activists record TikToks breaking down why it hit so deep. A best-selling author posts, The music softens, no longer the pulse of confrontation, but the quiet hum of realization. The camera drifts through a montage, studio lights fading, split screens dissolving, and the echo of Crockett's final words still hanging in digital air. The narrator's voice enters, low, reflective, almost reverent. This wasn't just Crockett versus Bondi. It was composure versus control, truth versus theatrics. The imagery shifts, from the shouting match on live television to the faces of ordinary viewers watching from their phones, their offices, their kitchens. The same line plays again, in subtitles across languages and screens. You keep talking over me because you don't want to hear the truth. It doesn't feel like an accusation anymore. It feels like a mirror. The narrator continues. In every era, there's a battle between noise and clarity, between those who think volume is power and those who know that silence, when chosen, is strength. Clips of Crockett in Congress flash by, speaking, listening, pausing with intent. Then photos from her past, the courtroom, the campaign trail, the community centers. The contrast is deliberate. Her calm is not new. It's the same energy that built her career, one steady word at a time. Decency doesn't need to dominate the mic. It only needs to stand its ground long enough for the noise to collapse. The screen slows. Bondi's earlier smirk reappears in replay, only now framed differently, not as the face of power, but of fragility dressed as confidence. The shot fades into Crockett's calm gaze, the stillness that rewrote the scene. What began as a clash of talking points has become something else, a reckoning with how we listen, how we interrupt, and who we decide deserves to be heard. The narrator's tone deepens. Every time a woman like Jasmine Crockett stands her ground, she isn't just defending her own voice. She's reminding the world that patience isn't permission, and silence isn't surrender. Cut to a series of short clips, women in boardrooms, classrooms, protest lines, nodding, speaking, laughing. Comment sections scroll upward like living testimony. This is for my mother, for every time I got talked over at work, for the girl who stopped apologizing before finishing her point. When one woman refuses to be silenced, thousands remember their own voice. The music builds, not triumphant, but luminous, a quiet crescendo of hope. Crockett's image dissolves into a constellation of faces, young, old, diverse, all connected by the same simple truth. Dignity doesn't need permission to speak. Then the narrator lowers their voice, contemplative. Maybe this wasn't about politics at all. Maybe it was about presence, the kind that can't be interrupted. The montage continues. Bondi's talking points fade into static. Crockett's final words echo through empty studio halls. Outside, the world moves on, but differently now, slightly sharper, slightly more self-aware. The narrator breathes the line that ties it all together. The loudest person in the room rarely wins history's argument, because history listens, and it remembers who kept their composure when others lost theirs. The final image lingers. Crockett leaving the studio, no entourage, no fanfare, just quiet steps and a faint smile that says more than a victory speech ever could. The screen fades to black. And that's why this wasn't the end. It was the turning point. The narrator concludes, voice soft but unyielding.
The music returns, soft piano, faint applause fading into the sound of a heartbeat. The screen glows with clips from the night, Crockett's calm expression, the stunned silence of the studio, and the digital wildfire that followed. Then the narrator turns, directly to the viewer. If you've ever been talked over, this moment was for you. The camera pulls in closer, because that's what it looked like when Pam Bondi tried to silence Jasmine Crockett and got destroyed not by rage, but by reason. The images shift, Bondi's expression frozen mid-interruption, Crockett's quiet, unwavering stare. The narrator continues, "In a world that rewards noise, she proved that restraint can roar louder than shouting ever could." A pause. The tone softens, invitational, personal. If you've ever been told to calm down, to wait your turn, to let someone else finish, know this: your voice still matters, your calm still counts, and your truth still deserves to be heard. Clips roll of viewers reacting online, women nodding, smiling, typing their stories into comment boxes. Over the montage, the narrator adds, "Like to amplify her voice. Comment your own 'I refuse to be silenced' story. Subscribe to join a community that believes dignity always wins." The imagery slows. Crockett's final expression fills the screen, steady, centered, victorious in silence. The narrator lowers their voice to a whisper. The mic dropped, but the echo still hasn't faded. The music fades to a single sustained note. Black screen. White text appears. Because when one woman stands her ground, the whole world listens. Fade out.